Hello and welcome to Walker Tea Review. I'm Jason Walker with hopefully a good reason why you should consider smaller tea shops, tea retailers when checking or looking for teas. Now, of course, you can find some good prices occasionally here and there. Some fabulous deals from a smaller vendor. But that's not really where their claim to fame is. The small-time vendor really has two things to offer. One of them is a more distinctive variety. You may find teas with a smaller vendor that you wouldn't necessarily find with others because they can tailor, they can customize for their clients. The other thing is story, which the tea that we're going to be looking at today will have as much, if not more, story than a lot of the other teas that are out there to look at and consider. So, with that in mind, you saw what I did. I took out a spoon, scooped out enough or shook out enough that my 4-ounce Gaiwan here gets enough tea to cover the bottom inch to inch and a half diameter of the base of the bowl there. I added my water so that I had enough that was rested above. A little bit of water seeps out above the rim that I just placed on here. And my water had been brought to a very low boil, started to kind of bubble, and then has been sitting there for about a minute. So while that's steeping, I'm going to go ahead and introduce this tea. And this, like I said, this tea retailer. This is the Asha Tea House out of Berkeley, California. And what else? This is let me go ahead and tell about it a little bit. This is an AliShan, which is a Taiwanese mountain. You can also know about the varietal. So this is the background, this is the story that you can get about this tea. Let me just go ahead and say, this is a spring 2011. Actually, my package here says that this was specifically harvested on April 11th, 2011. You can actually know about the tea master who crafts the tea, and that's a key consideration. That the more you want, the higher level of connoisseurship you get into. Who is the person? Who are the people behind the actual crafting of these teas? What experiences do they have? What's their attitude, perspective? Do they like a little bit more of a roasty, fiery aspect? Do they go with a more modern, newer, lighter oxidation, greener type of oolongs? So that's what's to consider there. You can get 25 grams for $11 of this tea that was made by Master Lee, and this information is found on the Asha Tea website, the product page for this AliShan. It is a Qingxin varietal that often gets translated as Pure Heart, as it is here, the Pure Heart varietal. So what I'm going to be looking at now is, of course, the dry leaf, the wet leaf, and the liquor. So I'm going to go ahead and open this up, get a smell here. Nice, sweet floral, sweet woodsy floral. I mean, this is kind of a lot of some of the English laurel. So it's like a shrub type, faint little flower, sappy bush sweetness there coming off of that. If anything, underneath that, there may be a little bit of like a sweet pea type of smell, sweet pea flowering sweet pea type of smell coming off there. Looking at these leaves though, I kind of scoop them out here. Now, some AliShans, again, like I was saying, moving along that range there, more traditional, often meant a little bit more intense heat notes, because these were often oven fired, a little, not as precise control on as far as what temperature was being emanated from, what heat was emanated from your coals, as opposed to a more modern oven type situation where temperature can be more tightly controlled, meaning a more newer modern may be greener. More traditional styles often kind of favored a little bit more of a toasty aspect, and I get just a hint. This is leaning a little bit more towards that toasty, in that it's not as the bright blue greens of a more modern oven fired type of AliShan. This one's got these are dark rich greens, which are good. Moving ever so slightly over to a lighter, slightly paler green, or a green yellow element here. You can also tell that these are tightly rolled. A lot of these look to be more than one leaf, so rolled together. You can actually see the stem that connects the leaves sticking out on the ends there. I'm looking to see here. At first glance, it looks like these stem ends were cut with a blade rather than torn by the hand. I mean, it could have been a blade in someone's hand, but still there was a blade being used. So, having said that, let's go ahead and move on a little bit and talk about this wet leaf and liquor. So I'm going to pour. Let me just kind of push that over to the side for a moment so you can see as I angle my lid over and pour here. Aiming for a fairly smooth pour, and a lot of that depends really on how the leaves line up at that instant before or as the water pours through. So getting those last few drops out, and go ahead and give this a smell here. Nice rich smells, teetering on a smidge of sweet cream type of butter, just lightly, but mostly it's a very fresh, lightly steamed kind of lima bean smell. So there is a beany sweetness there, but it's not overly cooked. It's not off-putting. It's still sweet, fresh, creamy, and still a little bit of the English laurel flower smell coming off there as well. So quite nice. Looking at these leaves, let me pull out just a little bit of what I have here. Here's a pear. One of the leaves got broken off about midway through. The other leaf mostly intact. I'm trying to open it up just a wee bit. Edges a little bit ragged, but they're mostly intact. And what I'm noticing here is not a lot of oxidation. You may see some of the jagged edge of the leaf there. Those are the kind of jagged little teeth of the leaf, and they're starting to get a little bit brown, oxidized, in rust type of color there. Pulling open these leaves here. Yep, still have this 2 leaves, and it looks like the bud or tip there. So I'm going to leave that there as well. You do get some. Now here, I'm looking at I should actually take a note here, or pause for a moment. Yes, these look a lot. These 2 that I pulled out so far, clean cut for the most part, smooth, straight cuts, not tears with the hand, indicating again that a tool was used to cut rather than just the hand itself, just a bare hand. Some other full-size leaves. You do have some individual leaves. You do have some kind of ragged, jagged-looking leaves, and that can happen when the rolling process gets to an individual leaf and it's a little too much for it. It can happen if there's a heating process, and if that individual leaf is thinner, the heat gets to it, dries it out, makes the edges more brittle, and so they will break off. Okay, so having looked at that, making sure that you can see the actual tips there, I'm going to move on now and talk a little bit about the liquor. Let me kind of set that aside, and to this here, give it a swirl for a moment. And what you're seeing here is a nice, bright, golden yellow color. You can actually see the filament or the elements from the liquor floating around in there like like tiny little fuzzy particles. Bright. It's got a good brightness to it. It's not dull. It's a rich, deep golden yellow type color. Still a little bit of a lima, and still some of the English laurel sweetness of the fragrant smell there. Good brightness as I look down through the cup here as well. The actual taste, I still get a, I think this is more of a sugar snap pea type of sweetness. So again, I mentioned a little bit of that sweet pea flour type of smell. That's picking up a little bit more than I'm getting here. Underneath that a little bit, I would still say some kind of freshly steamed lima bean. There is that beanie pea type aspect that's coming out. But again, it's a sweet, it's fresh, it's garden fresh, and what's along with that, especially in the aftertaste, there's a nice coating resting on the mouth, and so it feels thick. It's like it's a nice blanket that's really coating and laying over my tongue, especially around the back here. Along with that, the aftertaste still has that sweet aspect there too, so that's positive. It's building this kind of residual honey type of sweetness. If you swallowed a teaspoon of honey, still a little bit of residue, say, stuck, folded underneath the back of your tongue. That's there as well, so that's positive. Off-camera tastings, the broth tended to pick up, it tended to seem watery at the front and then richer in the back and in the aftertaste. Though aftertaste is a bit more consistent right now, which is a positive, nice even flow. Stringency, it's not a bitter, harsh. It's just enough of a stringency that just kind of makes you feel like you've got a coating, and it's not a puckery type of coating. It's just a nice smooth coating over the top of the tongue, underneath and the sides and underneath, a little bit on the insides of the cheeks as well there. So overall, nice. And then again, that rolls into that sweet aftertaste that's there as well. So when I look at this tea as a whole, I'd give this tea a 92. Lots of positive aspects, and again, lots of reasons to check out, give proper consideration to that smaller tea retailer, to hear those stories and appreciate the uniqueness of what they have to offer. So, come back to Walker Tea Review. I hope we're providing something that's unique and worthwhile as well.